Alfred Tuah Yeboahsays is Deputy Attorney General. He is at the Ministry of Justice and Attorney General's Department. Honorable, you're welcome to Eyewitness News.
Thank you very much, my brother.
Why did the Attorney General's Department decide to disagree with the trial judge's position? He said that he thought the case should try or be tried afresh because of all the issues that came up in the course of the trial. For instance, the judge was accused of bias. It traveled all the way to the Supreme Court. There was a time where he was removed, and I'm referring to Justice Onyenuga. Number of challenges had come up in the course of this trial. Indeed, the trial itself has not gone far. Number of rulings coming in, the challenges coming up here and there, and motions being filed. The new trial judge believed that in order to sanitize the case and to ensure confidence in the case, let's start everything afresh. Why did the AG disapprove of this?
Thank you very much. Now, in the course of trying a criminal matter in any court of law, when it comes to a case where there's a new judge, the new judge, when he takes over, has a discretion to either adopt or start de novo. But in essence, that discretion, such a judge is supposed to look at various instances. And in this particular case, it was our considered view that even though the judge had the power to exercise his discretion, looking at the various parameters, he erred. And that's the basis for which we filed an appeal at the Court of Appeal.
So discretion to be exercised by the trial judge. And in this instance, he believed, based on his reading of the case, that the case itself is tainted, and he believed that to sanitize it, start afresh. What factors did you consider as a department for which reason you thought that even though the judge had a discretion, he should not exercise it in the manner he exercises this time round?
Yes, I think one of the key points that the trial judge relied on has to do with the proceedings having been tainted. We argued that if you look at the evidence, and I'm underlining the word evidence, if you look at the evidence adduced in the trial, there was no point during the trial that we can say that the accused person raised an issue with whether the judge was writing the right evidence or not record the right evidence. The evidence was intact. So in adopting proceedings, it has been our argument that the trial judge is supposed to look at the evidence, properly so-called, but not other matters. Now, for example, there were issues relating to the trial judge being biased, not being biased. Motions were filed. All those motions were decided on by the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeal. And in court, if issues are determined into their finality, then there's no issue again. If you raise an issue of bias against a judge, and then you go on appeal, after the Supreme Court says, no, there's no bias on the part of the judge, it means that matter has come to an end. And for that matter, you cannot use it in subsequent arguments to say because of that, you may not want to adopt the evidence in that particular trial. That has been our argument.
How do you deal with public perception then? Because the decision, the challenges that we saw in the court, we traveled all the way to the Supreme Court, led to some level of public perception against the case. And indeed, even the accused persons themselves may have some perception of the whole trial. How do you cure that perception, having gone to undo what had been done by the High Court judge?
Yes, that is the beauty of the rule of law. In fact, I will never fault the accused person for taking up issues in court in connection with this trial because that is his right. His fundamental right to appeal against rulings that disagrees. The same way, the state also has that kind of right to appeal against decisions made by the court that the state disagrees. So for the past 5 years, the accused person has been filing appeals, applications, and I will not fault him because that is his right to do so. In this instance, the state will decide to activate its right to file an appeal, and an appeal was filed. And today, the Court of Appeal agreed with the state. So it is not as if someone is being unfairly treated in actual fact, both parties have the right to file for a process at the Court of Appeal or the Supreme Court. And if you look at this particular trial, for the last 5 or 6 years, the matter has gone to the Court of Appeal, to the Supreme Court, then we come back, it goes back, we go, we come back. And this is not the first time that a ruling of a court of law has been overturned on appeal. And so for that matter, if this matter has been decided today, the fact that the matter should be continued, it is not the first time, and we must all accept it.
Interesting. Now, while we are talking about the credibility and the challenges around this particular case, we have information that the trial judge whose decision was decided on today had actually been transferred. Is this something that you can confirm to us? And is there a possibility that the transfer has anything to do with his position? Because we are told that he is a quote and unquote no-nonsense judge, and the state is not particularly happy with this position of his. And by punishing him, you've decided to transfer him to the courts in Kumasi. I know that that is not within the Attorney General's department to decide, but you are in the government. What do you know about this?
I am aware that judges in Ghana, some judges in Ghana have been transferred, including Justice Anokye Gyimah. The reason for which judges are transferred, as you said, are not within the domain of the government or, for that matter, the Ministry of Justice. It is a singular duty of the Chief Justice to decide that judges may be transferred from Station A or to Station D. And these transfers, as I have already stated, is not only in connection with one particular judge. From my reading, some judges have been transferred, including this particular judge.
And you can again convince the public that, and indeed the accused persons, that it has nothing to do with his tough stance on the case, which stance has been challenged by the states. And so people would only logically believe that that is why he was transferred, because he's not willing to play ball. How would you convince the public and the persons who are standing trial?
Yes, judges are supposed to be tough. Judges are supposed to give their decisions devoid of any other considerations but in accordance with law. If you disagree with the judge, the avenue is for you to appeal. If you disagree with the judge, you do not do anything to him. So in this particular case, this judge, in his wisdom, delivered a ruling which they say decided to appeal against. And in the wisdom of the Chief Justice, there is this decision to transfer judges, which has actually affected this particular judge. I do not think that his transfer has anything to do with the decision that he's delivered. He's been on the bench for some time, and I shudder to think that any Chief Justice may even want to go along that line, or that because you give decision A, I'm transferring to region B or region C. No. Maybe it's by coincidence, but I don't think there's anything connecting the two. The orders, the ruling that he delivered, and then his transfer. Not at all.
Very well. Thank you so much. But do you have any indication that the persons who are not happy with today's decision of the Court of Appeal may proceed to the Supreme Court on this matter, or this is the end?
They have the right to also appeal if they think that the decision delivered today is not something that they agree with. So, and as I stated, that is the beauty of rule of law. The Court of Appeal has delivered a ruling. They also may decide to appeal to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court also have a bite and then determine once and for all the state of this particular matter. So if they decide to exercise that option, we will not be surprised.
Very well. Thank you so much for your time and for speaking to us tonight.